Portal season is kind of over. The window's closed to enter. I'm going to tell you the 5 biggest portal losses Wisconsin had.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. As always, really do appreciate you tuning in. However you're finding this show, it is much, much, much appreciated. Thank you so much for always being part of the community. Okay, so I've been thinking about this for a minute, and I'm trying not to make the comparison I'm about to make, but it's the best term I can use because this is not the military. It's not that serious. But the portal's closed, at least in terms of who can enter. And the best word I can find to describe it is a war of attrition. And again, that is not perfect, but it's literally, from a sports standpoint, this feels like a war of attrition a little bit, the portal season. And we've gone through the first part of Portal Wars 2024. Another one, our last part of Portal Wars 2024. Another one's opening up in the spring. I'm going to get to that later. But we've gone through the first part of Portal War, or this portion of Portal Wars. What's the attrition? Like, it's like getting back from the battlefield almost and be like, what's the casualties? What have we lost? We're going to talk about that on today's show. Biggest losses, most surprising losses, hardest hit positions. What's next? I'm going to start here with my 5 biggest losses. These are the Badger lost 24 guys in the portal, 24 players. That's like a quarter of the roster. That's an entire recruiting class worth, an entire SEC recruiting class worth, because they over recruit, right? They land 25 to 30 people every cycle. That's crazy. You lost 25 guys to the portal. These are my 5 biggest losses. Starting with number 5, Braden Moore. You're talking about a guy. He's big to me because he's a pretty talented athlete at a position of need, at a spot where we struggle to get talented athletes. A guy that, coming over from Cincinnati, it felt the Cincinnati cadre, the Cincinnati core, it felt like those players probably had a better feel for Tressel and Fickle. It felt a little bit like they would be part of the new culture for the program. You're talking about the Paulings, the Burrows, the Moores. Well, Moore is part of the recruiting class they were bringing in, so he wasn't really there. But excuse me. But my point is, like, he came over with this staff, so it felt like there'd be a little more ingrained loyalty there. And a talented young athlete, pretty high pedigree high school recruit at a position that the Badgers need some help at, and now at a position where they still need some help at because you've lost a lot of players in the secondary. Yeah, Moore to me was a big loss. Had a couple more years of eligibility left for all those reasons. That's number 5 for me. And if you're listening to the show now, we're going live at an unusually late hour. So if you're here and you're a psycho like me, man, let's go. But if you're listening now, who are your 5 biggest portal losses? Who are your biggest portal losses? If you're listening to the show afterwards, let me know who are your 5 biggest portal losses. We'll do a community recap on it. Number 4 for me is Nelu Lafayette. I know he didn't do anything last year. I also know 4-star edge rushers don't grow on trees. There's unusual twitch and burst there. Everybody saw that film he put out on Twitter where, he's giving some pretty good tackles on Wisconsin's team. Like Jack Nelson and Riley Ballman are good offensive tackles. They are good veteran college offensive tackles. And he's working them a little bit in practice. Now, it's practice, and those are practice highlights. There's a bunch more clips that aren't out there where he's probably getting buried. That's completely fair. But you had 4 more years of a potentially disruptive edge rusher that came here from Hawaii. He really wanted to be here. To see him leave in a year, it really puts a damper on how exciting it was to get that 4-star edge recruit, that guy who you could start to project out, who could be part of the answer for this pass rush situation. Losing Nelu Lafayette to me was a gut punch. It really was. That's number 4 on the list for me. Number 3 is partially because position of need. It's JTJ, James Thompson Jr. He's a starter this year if he stays. He's a starter at defensive end. He's a guy that last year, if you remember the build up to last year, the staff was kind of raving about him. He, best offseason we've ever seen from him. Going to be a difference maker this year. Best defensive lineman on the roster. 6'5", better burst. Then he gets hurt and then he's gone. And you're like, what the train tracks is that, man? Apparently everything was going really well and you were in line for a big year and this team really has a hole there. And I think still maybe kind of has a hole there. And to just go and bounce to Illinois, because when he bounced, my thought was, Well, last year in college, there's a chance he just wants to go play for a contender. Like last year in college, go get some money and play for a contender. I could see that. But to go to Illinois, better than Wisconsin right now for sure. But that still doesn't feel like, really? That's number 3 for me. Position of need, where you ended up, how much I think, and the vibes going into last year between him and the staff, it felt strong. Number 2 is Pauling. That's a loss. I know a lot of people are frustrated with the drop rate, and the drop rate spiked last year. It was really uncharacteristically bad for a slot receiver and for Will Pauling. He also got 74 passes the year before. Right. Like, let's average those two things out. If you have an outfielder on a team that maybe doesn't have a ton of outfielders, and one year he hits 330 and the next year he hits 260, you average it out and you're like, well, that's a 300 hitter. We'll take that. That's a big loss from an experience standpoint. I think he's the crispest route runner on the team, the guy that gets separation, tough as hell. Say whatever you want about him. He would go over the middle and he would take shots. Pauling took a ton of shots. He was not gun shy. Y'all remember that clip from the 90s, Ricky Waters going over the middle with the Eagles running back, threw the pass out there, and he just kind of alligator armed it because he didn't want to get hit. That's not Pauling. Pauling gets hit. Pauling's tough, good route runner. That's a loss. There is not a lot of experience coming back for the Badgers in the receiver room. There's Vinny, and then there's some question marks. So that one to me, Will Pauling's my number 2. And number 1 is Xavier Lucas. I know we've talked about the Xavier Lucas thing. I probably have a little more to add on it because I've had a couple more days to think about it. But there's no cutting around it. That's the shallowest position on the team right now. That's the guy that has NFL type upside. You just don't get a lot of 6'1" corners with his speed in Wisconsin. And for him to leave in a year, and I know he's not officially gone, but he's not coming back. I want to bury that. I'm still seeing people saying, well, could Wisconsin strong arm him to stay? Is there a chance here? So no, that dude's gone. Like, whether it's just a matter of timing now. And let's be honest, there's another window opening up in the portal. What's going to happen here with Xavier Lucas, in my opinion, this is not going to be done early. This is going to drag out, in my opinion, a little bit. And you're going to see this drag into the spring portal window. That's what I think is going to happen. So I don't think this is even going away anytime soon, but he is not coming back. And if you're Wisconsin, I don't think you want him back. It's not a personal thing at all. But that bridge, I think, is just kind of, you got to move on with people who want to be here and people that you can count on to be in the foxhole. And I just don't think that's going to be Xavier Lucas, even if you were to try to strong arm him. That bridge is done. That being said, you lost a cornerback from one of the shallow spots on the team that would have been a definite starter next year. That's a major hit for the Badgers. So those are my top 5. Jackson Taylor has Mabry 5, Moore 4, Snowden 3, Pauling 2, Lucas 1. I thought about Mabry because I still think the quarterback room is kind of light, but I think you functionally kind of replaced him with O'Neal and Edwards and Carter Smith coming in. So I definitely thought about him. Snowden's a great pull for sure. Nathan says, my opinion, the biggest losses were Tywee, Xavier, Lucas, Mabry, and Anelu. Tywee's a good one. I was higher on Tywee, what he did last year, than a lot of other people were. I do think people are kind of quick to write off the fact that he had 10 touchdowns and 860 yards. I know this is Wisconsin, and I know those are kind of pedestrian numbers at times for Wisconsin. You also don't just roll the dice and get that at times. I think that's a good one too, Nathan. Let's take a quick second here. I want to come back and talk about the biggest surprise guys to me. The guys that I didn't really see entering the portal that did. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Rocket Money. Rocket Money is the ultimate. Again, we talked about this a lot. If you got to cut some unwanted subscriptions, whatever it is, Trains Unlimited, whatever you're getting into your inbox, if you got to cut some of those subscriptions, go over to Rocket Money. Get rid of the stuff that is siphoning off your money so you can't spend your money on cheese curds, IPAs, and Don Makowski rookie cards, right? That's where your money's got to go. Makowski's, listen, that stock's going to bounce back at some point. That's where the money needs to go, not to all that other superfluous subscription nonsense that's still draining your bank account and you don't even know about it. Rocket Money is a personal finance app, helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings, brings everything together in one place. They've saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. That's up to $740 a year when you're using the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go check them out. Save some money. All right, let's talk surprise guys. Here are my biggest surprise guys that hit the portal that I didn't see coming. The first one I already talked about, JTJ. I did not see that one coming. I really didn't. Let me start off with this one, actually. Some of these guys I saw coming. or at least they didn't surprise me at all. Mabry, Matt Toyer, I had heard during the year there was some weirdness there, so maybe some homesickness. I'd heard a couple things. So while losing him frustrated me, because I'm not going to crap on the kid. He's still a 6'5" redshirt freshman with good straight line speed and a good arm that played Texas 5A football. I still want that guy in the quarterback room 100%. But it didn't surprise me when he left, especially when the Danny O'Neal move happened. When that happened, I was like, nah, that dude's probably gone. Xavier Lucas, unfortunately, did not super surprise me. Heard some stuff during the season. A couple other guys that didn't really surprise me. Kurt Neal didn't surprise me. It felt just like the scheme wasn't going to fit him. A couple of the DBs, Amari Snowden definitely didn't surprise me. A couple of those didn't surprise me at all. JTJ surprised me. That's one that surprised me. Just because, again, there was such an automatic layup of a starting spot here. And it felt like this defense needed that. It felt like he fit what they were going towards. You just need a bigger, long-limbed defensive end that can set the edge and kind of gum up some of that stuff. That could be JTJ easily. And it felt like there was a good vibe there. He was rehabbing. I talked to him a little bit. Once I ran into him during the season and it seemed good. That one surprised me. That was a surprising one to me. Braden Moore, another surprising one. Again, because I felt like there was a connection with Cincinnati. That one kind of surprised me. DeCluna is one that surprised me too. Another guy who, if you remember, when he was committed to Cincinnati, as soon as this staff came over to Wisconsin, Fickle, Max, Pat, they put this full court press on him, and it was just this really, it felt like, yeah, we vibe with each other. This is going to be a good thing. And then you look at next year's depth chart, there's so much playing time at cornerback. And he's not a local kid, so it does kind of make sense that he would leave. But that one surprised me a little bit too, because it felt like the staff liked him, and it felt like next year he was in line for a big role. We'll get a couple more comments here. Anyone else that maybe surprised you, or who some of the other people were? Hooger just says, sup. Ethan says, got some bad sleep. I'm in South Carolina. Hopefully this will cheer me up, brother. Ethan, I don't know if this is a cheer up show, but I'm here for you, man. I'm sorry that you're not sleeping too well. Nathan says, Mabry committed to Sam Houston State. Been dying to hear your thoughts. So 3 things there. Mabry committed to Longo. He didn't commit to Wisconsin. When I was talking to Mabry's dad, he talked specifically, they're probably going to go to North Carolina unless Longo left. And Longo left and went to Wisconsin. So that doesn't really surprise me at all. The fact that he didn't play this year, I don't think was a Longo thing. I think it was twofold. I think it was a Mabry thing not being fully ready. And I also kind of think Fickle and this staff, it could get a lot worse. I know people look at Brainlock and say, how much worse could it get? I don't know if you're winning like the Rutgers, Northwestern. I don't know if you're winning that strip of games with Mabry Mentor. So it was a combination. He's not ready. But there was no bad blood there with Mabry and Longo. Mabry came here for Longo. So when Longo went to Sam Houston, which is where it's much closer to where Mabry lives, to me, that felt like a logical kind of connection. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to follow it just because I'm interested in the zombie Badgers. By the way, zombie Badgers are what I'm calling all the Badgers that have left. It's going to be like my zombie Badger team, and I'm going to track how they all do. It's also a term I've been using a long time kind of internally for recruits I really like, that either we don't pursue or we lose. Like Sexton is on my zombie Badger team. So I'm going to see what all these zombie Badgers do. So I'll be following it. I'm interested in it for sure. Hooger says it's wild. Mabry to SHS, which is Sam Houston State. Jackson says, I don't mind losing Tywee just because of Jones. He's a few. I love Dylan Jones. I agree. I don't mind losing him, but I'm of the mind where I'm also not going to minimize what he did. He almost had 1,000 yards, 150, almost had 900 yards. I don't want to overstate it, but almost had 900 yards, had 10 touchdowns. Like, you have to replace that. I guess what I'm saying is you have to now replace that. You lost that. You have to now replace it. I do think the younger backs on the team can do it. Let's talk some positions that were hit the hardest. Jordan Run says, locked on Badgers After Dark. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Jordan. Let's talk positions hit the hardest. And it's obvious. It's quarterback, right? You look at the other 24 of the quarterback losses. Van Dyke to the portal, Locke to the portal, LaCrue to the portal, Mettoyer to the portal. I don't know. That's crazy. That's crazy to lose basically your entire quarterback room, except for Milo Spasovic and an income. And by the way, one of your incoming guys decommitted, right? You lost 5 quarterbacks. That's insane. A lot of quarterback rooms have 5 guys. We don't even have 5 guys now. If we're going back to our war of attrition, that regiment got decimated. They got sent out on a scouting mission and they got ambushed. Nobody left. Yeah, that quarterback spot got hammered. No. What did you do to replace? Billy Edwards, Danny O'Neal, Carter Smith coming in. You still got Milo Spasovic. I don't think you need another quarterback. I've kind of said that a couple times. I know it's wonky to go into the season with four scholarship guys with Edwards, Carter Smith, Daniel O'Neal. Three guys. Sorry, 4 bodies with Milos. I know that's kind of wonky. I don't know what you're going to get in a portal guy that's coming in to not be the starter, not to be the backup, and not to be the future. And if that's all you're getting, I don't know what he adds to the room. Like, what kind of guy is that? That's like a grocery clerk, right? That's like a Pop-Tart tester. I mean, that's like you're not going to get anybody with any substantial talent to come in if you're not if they can't be the future, they can't be the backup, they're not going to be the starter. You're just not going to get anything that adds to the room, unless you're willing to spend a ton of money, and you've already spent a ton of money at the quarterback spot. So it just doesn't. I think it is what it is. And you have 2 guys with experience, right? So you have a starter and a backup that started 11 games last year. That's a better spot than a lot of teams are in. If you lose if you lose your 1 and your number 2 quarterback, well, then your season sucks anyway. Like then it's down to the portal anyway, because whoever else you brought in isn't going to save your season at that point regardless. So I'm just not that worried about needing another quarterback. I could be wrong on that. That's just my take on it. Logan says, love the analogy. Totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know what you would possibly bring in this year that would add to the room, because everybody either wants to get paid, be the future, or be the starter. And you're not going to sell be the future with Carter Smith. You're not going to sell be the starter with Billy Edwards. You're not going to even sell to be the backup, because you sold Daniel O'Neal on that. And you don't have the money to pay a 3rd transfer portal quarterback anyway. I don't know. Unless you can literally find a Kurt Warner that's in a grocery store, I don't think you're going to get anything that makes sense. Okay, let's go. Next position, obviously got to hit the hardest was cornerback. I talked about quarterback. Cornerback got murdered, right? Amari Snowden, Max Lofi, DeClona, Xavier Lucas, Jace Arnold. Jace Arnold's one, man. First of all, there's a lot of kids that young men is a better term for it, that I've talked to, Badger recruits. Jace Arnold's been one of my favorite. Like Cole LaCruz is one of my favorites. Jace Arnold I really liked. On the current team, I really like Dylan Jones, actually. I thought he was really good. I really enjoyed him. A couple other guys, Grant Steck, I really enjoyed interviewing him as well. So there's guys still on the current team I really enjoyed. Cooper Catalano, who's coming in, great kid. I think he's going to be a fan favorite. Emmerich is another one. Is another one who I think people are going to really like. Jace Arnold could fly. Jace Arnold is like a 4.4 flat guy. I'm bummed he didn't work out. But yeah, cornerback got absolutely decimated. So you lost 5 bodies. What have you done to fix that? Well, you got 1 transfer. Jameer. Oh man, I'm blanking. I just wrote his name down and I closed that tab. The Jacksonville State guy. I'm sorry. I'm completely blanking on that. But you brought in that cornerback. I talked about him already. 5'10-ish. I think he's fine. He's more of a depth piece. He reminds me again of like the Antonio Finellis types that the Badgers have had, maybe a little bit bigger. And then you have freshmen. That's all you. Oh, thank you, Eric Matson. I knew somebody in the chat would get me. Even at 1:44 Central Standard Time. Lattimore, thank you. He reminds me of kind of like that older style of Badger cornerback that we had a lot under Bielema. The kind of 5'10", technically sound guy, tackles well, good player, solid player. And then you got some freshmen. That spot is a potential disaster. I'm just saying right now, like our cornerback spot it's scary bad. And it's like project, and that let's say Rico comes back. Okay, because I don't even want to talk about the scenario if he doesn't. Let's say Rico comes back. So you have Rico. Who's your number 2? Emilio Agard? That guy didn't play last year. So you would potentially count on a redshirt freshman to be your number 2. Who's your number 3? Jay Harper? Guy didn't play last year either. I really like Jay Harper. Another guy, by the way, who I was able to interview, I really liked. Emilio as well. Really like both those cats. Those are true freshmen last year who haven't played. So you're going to count on 2 redshirt freshmen. Maybe it's Lattimore who played at Jacksonville State last year, or it's true freshmen. Guys, that they got to add 2 more portals. They got to add. One of them has to be kind of a decent dude. Whether it's Lewis, whoever it is, that spot is in danger of being really, really sketchy, really, really scary, really, really iffy. Got a couple comments in here. Logan says Washington. I think they're going to need Jamari Washington and Jair Scott. I think they're potentially going to need Kairos Gaines. I think 2 of those guys, I put it in the Discord, over under, and in the chat right now, or in the comments if you watch the show tomorrow, over under 1.5 true freshman DBs playing a significant role this year. I think it's over. I think it's almost easily over unless they add like 3 more portal guys. And if you're counting on 2 or 3 true freshmen to play a significant role, That's scary. Jackson says under, which is interesting to me. And I think that would actually be good for the Badgers. I think that would mean that you pulled a couple more portal guys and you have more depth now. I think that would be ideal. But a lot of other people are saying over. Yeah, and Jackson is pointing out, and this is what I'm getting into next, is there's still time for the spring portal. I'm going to get into that next on Locked On Badgers and what that could look like. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. And as always, a quick second to say thank you for everybody tuning in to the show, especially at, 1:46 Central Standard. It is awesome to have you here. We appreciate it. All right, let's talk what's next, because this ties into Xavier Lucas. It ties into still what this team could do. And there's still, when I say the portal closed, it's not technically true. The portal, for the opportunity for players to enter the portal outside of those teams still playing in bowl games, right? So there's still some really loaded rosters. And that's actually where it gets a little interesting. So there's still some really loaded rosters. You're looking at the Oregons, the Ohio States, obviously everybody in the playoffs. The portal hasn't closed on those rosters. So players can jump out of those, and you still have the spring coming up. So what could happen in the spring? In the spring, I think you're going to see a lot of players who are settling in and saying, nope, I don't have a spot here, and they're going to enter the portal. So there is opportunity for still to add a cornerback or two that isn't in the portal yet, right? There's still opportunity if you wanted another quarterback. There's going to be quarterbacks that lose battles in the spring. This happens every spring. Quarterbacks lose battles. Well, it's new now. The last couple of years is some of those quarterbacks that lose those battles are immediately going to jump at the portal. So if you are of the mind that you need a portal quarterback, you can get one in the spring. If you're looking at your defensive line crop you brought in and two of them look like they're not going to contribute, maybe even give them their defensive lineman, but definitely corner. Definitely a spot where you can look in the portal after spring and say, okay, we have an opportunity to grab another corner or two here. Could happen. The other side of this, though, is I think there's some players, if you look on a roster, who are going into the spring saying, I need to see where I'm at on this roster right now. And if I'm not good, I'm going to jump. I don't want to speculate whatsoever, but a guy like Cade Yakimelli, who I'm kind of surprised he's still in this roster. I'm going to be honest. He could be looking at that spring window and saying, okay, new offense coordinator, I'm going to give it a shot. And by the way, hats off to him. I'm going to do a show coming up on Hunter Wohler and kind of the players that remind me of the old school, like how college football kind of used to be. And you just stayed at a place the whole time. They play their hearts out and you just cheer like hell for him. Hunter Wohler's a cheer like hell kind of guy for. Yak is becoming that guy too, if he sticks around, because a lot of guys would have left. A lot of guys would have complained. A lot of guys would have went public. A lot of guys would have tweeted. It feels like just kept his head down and worked. And up to this point, he's still on this team, which makes me think he wants to continue to keep his head down and work, which is hell yeah, let's go. He's the guy that I would think is going to look at that spring window, see where he's at after spring practices. And if he still feels like he's not going to get reps on this team, that's an opportunity for a guy like him to leave. Because at that point, how could you blame him? And it just might be one of those things where, for whatever reason, Wisconsin isn't seeing what they need to see in practice, and Cade isn't getting those reps. So I think you're going to see some potential movement at running back for Wisconsin after that spring window. I don't think you're going to see anything at quarterback because we don't got any. But maybe receiver. There's a bit of a jam up at receiver with some players. You might see a guy or two there. The new defensive lineman, it's going to be interesting to see where all those pieces fit after spring. So yeah, we're not done yet. Spring practice is coming up. Spring, another portal window is going to open up, so the Badgers can still address those defensive back needs there. It's going to be really interesting to me to see in spring what this depth chart looks like and what that might prompt other players on this roster to either do or not to do in the portal. Sam says, respect for whiskey fans, 39 viewers live, and it's almost 2 a.m. Still getting used to being in the Big Ten. Sam, man, dude, what team are you a fan of, man? And welcome to the chat. Yeah, and I tell you, this would have been such a fun show to do like 5 years ago when we were competing for Orange Bowls and we were 12-1. That would have been a lot of fun. And Nathan nails it. We're an underrated diehard fan base. Ain't no doubt about it. Badger fans are unique, man. They're cut from a different type of cloth. DK says, how many defense players do the Badgers have to lose before Tressel finally portals out? I don't know, man. The Tressel thing is tough because I said most of last year, and I still believe this. There wasn't a lot of talent for him to work with. I think he was operating with a hand tied behind his back, and it's tough as a defensive coordinator. Like, I don't know if there's a Badger on this defense this year that's going to get drafted outside of Hunter Wohler. I think Hunter Wohler will get picked. Ricardo Holman, if he goes to the NFL, I think that's the decision we're kind of waiting on, could get picked. But for the most part, I don't know if there's really an NFL dude in the front seven. So is that on Tressel it's really hard to constantly have to manufacture things if you just don't have dudes. That being said, it also feels like there were some guys maybe that should have been playing more, and it feels like at times we did get a little out schemed. The Iowa game, for example, just sticks out in my head. It's something that cannot happen. You cannot give up 42 to Iowa when they throw 10 passes. I'm sorry. Put 13 guys in the box and just make the ref throw a penalty every single time and make them march down the field 5 yards at a time. And that would have been better than the Iowa game. That would have made more sense to me than seeing our safeties playing 12 yards back. I'm sorry. That's still a rough spot for me there. Still a rough spot for me there. Nathan says, I really hope Yakimelli honestly is an active number 3 and maybe number 2. He needs the ball more. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. I love Yak. I just stopped talking about it at one point this year because it's like, I don't know what else to say. The guy's averaging 8.3 yards per carry. And even though we all know he's not Adrian Peterson, which means he's not going to continue averaging 8.3 yards per carry, I have this mantra in life. You just keep giving the guy that averages 8.3 yards per carry the ball until he's not averaging 8.3 yards per carry. Right? Like, you just keep doing it until it doesn't work at some level. Yeah, it drives me nuts. Logan says, can't lie, keeping Yak feels like he could be a big part next year. Need to keep him. I think he's a good part of it. I really do. I think he's a good part of it. Sam Kim says, the Iowa game for you guys, I don't know. Iowa just seems to have one of those games every year. Ben Powell, none of us can sleep after watching a disappointing Packers team. At least, listen, much better than being a Niners fan this year. At least you kind of have the Packers to give you some hope and do something. But I hear you, man. When you get bad football, it stinks, and it is hard to sleep. I'm gonna wrap it up there. Oh, we got one more. We got a bunch more a couple more comments here. Eric says our depth at DB is extremely bad. If they are going to be exhausted on the field, and 2, if anyone gets injured, yeah. And keep in mind, last year's pass rush was almost historically bad for the Badgers. Well, there's not a guarantee that's going to be better. I think it will be. I hope it will be. If it absolutely needs to be. And I don't mean to go pessimist on this show. I'll do an optimistic show tomorrow. I promise. I lean optimist. Y'all guys know that. I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, especially offensively. But defensively, I'm not sure our pass rush got better. And I know our secondary got worse. So what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe not great. Anyway, on Wisconsin, y'all guys are incredible and amazing. I do appreciate you so much. Bunch more content coming up this week. Got a couple guests coming up this week too that I think are going to be fun. Jackson Taylor says, who do you think is more NFL potential, Haywood, Mandel, or Jones? I think it's Haywood because I think Mandel is, I think he could be a tackle. The fact that the staff had him at tackle makes me think that they believe in that. He's got some film in high school there. I think he's probably more of a guard, maybe, but man, Haywood has elite tackle measurables. The staff loves him. That's a position that's really hard to fill in the NFL. I just think it's Haywood. I also like Jones. Jones is a guy that I've been high on ever since we got him. So I think all 3 of them are potential NFL guys, but Haywood is kind of a freak show. So I would go Haywood there. All right. On Wisconsin, y'all guys are amazing. Nathan says, best Locked On podcast. Oh, appreciate it, brother. And Logan says, need some more after dark. Love it. Yeah, man, I'm all about it. And Jan says, nothing here is going to help me go back to sleep. Would be nice to see we are going to get a bunch of good players. I'll just say that. Appreciate you guys. Bunch of good dudes in the chat as always. And a bunch more content coming up this week. When you're going to go check out Locked On Big Ten, Locked On College Football, all the latest content over there on Wisconsin. And we will talk later.